Welcome to Soccer Morning on NASN. Here's your host, Jason Davis.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into the program, Soccer Morning on the North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. Friday never seems to be calm around here. I feel like, and I think I say this every week, I always say Friday's supposed to be a slack day. I think for most of you it is, and now the NCAA tournament, basketball tournament is going on. I'm sure a lot of people are slacking out there. You're listening to this show. If you listen to the show every day, I guess you're not a slacker. You're just a committed individual who knows how to multitask, right? So we've got a full show today. In fact, right off the bat, we're going to jump in and talk TFC with our friend Curtis Larson from the Toronto Sun. Curtis, how are you, sir?
Good. What's going on, Jason?
We're getting ready for a big weekend of soccer action. Toronto FC opening up their home schedule at BMO Field this weekend. I imagine that excitement is palpable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of buzz that even people going back to 2007 who were, here from the start and here when you saw the stadium full, they're speaking in terms that this is bigger than that back then. So, there's a lot of campaigns going on. There's Defoe spaces all over subways and streetcars, and it's a lot of excitement. So we'll see if they can build on last weekend's win and some people are saying this game's more important than last weekend because it's at home and there's going to be a lot more attention from the Toronto faithful.
Yeah, it's $100 million worth of excitement and some other things as well. I mean, certainly what Tim Lewicki and Bezbatchenko did in the offseason was strengthening this squad overall while adding those big high-profile additions. All right, so they beat Seattle last weekend for their opener. It was a good sign that things are going to be better in Toronto this season. They've got DC United at home. There should be every expectation. Do you think that actually increases the pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does because for once, I think odds makers have TFC favored to win a game, which has, been unusual over the last 3 years. But, it's a tricky game. It's a tricky fixture because, first of all, the pitch is going to be in terrible condition, which is, the great equalizer. I talked to Stephen Caldwell this week, and he actually told me he'd rather play on turf than what TFC is going to be playing on Saturday, just due to the wintry conditions. It's not really due to anything MLSC or being done wrong. But, it's tricky, a lot of overhaul between the two teams. Maybe this is the week DC gets it right. They have, a decent back line now with that, adding Bobby Boswell and Sean Franklin. So, it's going to be tricky. Can Defoe put two in again? I don't know. They didn't create a lot of chances last weekend, which is kind of a concern. But as long as Defoe stays prolific, they should be okay.
You say it's a decent back line in D.C., but they gave up 3 to Columbus in their opener, so there's still some serious doubt about the defensive quality of D.C. United. But I mean, to characterize the Toronto win in Seattle properly, you sort of have to say they took advantage of Seattle mistakes. It wasn't really some sort of brilliant attacking performance. So does that indicate, and maybe this is a function of Ryan Nelson, maybe this is a function of the new team, maybe it's a function of those pieces and working them in, but are they going to be a sort of reactive team? We just had Michael Bradley say possession isn't a big deal, or he said it's overrated, Curtis.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some tempering expectations going on here right now. I think after that game, I asked, General Manager Tim Bezbatchenko, is this an MLS Cup ready team? And he said, absolutely not. I think, we showed a lot of things in Seattle, but we didn't show we were MLS Cup ready just for the things you listed. I think Michael Bradley was pointing to possession as saying, well, it doesn't tell the whole story, but I think, over the course of a season, I think possession does tell the course of the story. I think if you're winning the possession battle 60 to 70% every game, I think you're going to be a playoff team. I think the statistics show that. So, but to be fair to Michael, he did say before the Seattle game that we're not going to win this game by playing pretty soccer. We're not going to be ready to play as a team yet. We're going to win this game by going in, showing resolve, showing aggression, and defending as a unit. And I think his words stood true.
And the field conditions, the turf in Seattle, which for my money is abysmal and makes for terrible soccer. And as you mentioned, the field conditions in Toronto with the wintry weather, that's pretty much how you're going to have to do it in the early part of the season, especially if you're dealing with that weather.
Yeah, and I think it just means that you're going to have to take advantage of the other team's mistakes. I think you're going to see a lot of slips on the weekend here. I think you're going to see a lot of divots. I think you're going to see a lot of missteps. So I think the difference this year is TFC has the players to punish those mistakes when in past years they didn't. So. Yeah, you're right. Something to watch. It's interesting to hear players say that they'd rather play on Seattle's turf than their own grass field.
One of the additions that TFC has made is Gilberto, who did not play against Seattle. What's his status, and how quickly can Nelson work him into what seems to be going in the right direction for this team?
I wish this call was going on 2 hours later because I'm heading up to training, so I can tell you his status then. I can tell you earlier in the week, Nelson was a little bit more hopeful than he was last week. So Gilberto's coming in. He came into camp a little bit lacking fitness, had a hip flexor injury. I'd be surprised if he starts this weekend, but I think if he's close to 100%, I think we'll see him off the bench for a guy like Dayro and maybe make that 60-minute change. To be honest, we don't know a lot about him. We didn't see him in preseason. We know he scored a lot of goals in Brazil. So kind of one of the more bigger question marks heading into this MLS season, especially with that DP tag on him.
You mentioned Dero there. One of the things that I was looking forward to for this TFC season was seeing how Dero worked into this team, how he dealt with sort of not being the alpha dog. He's everywhere he's been pretty much the number one guy, except for maybe a brief stint in New York and that kind of thing. But is he the type of player that can take a back seat and let Defoe and Bradley be the face of the team while he goes about his business and helps his team win?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big risk bringing De Rosario back to Toronto, especially in the way he left. I think the only reason he came back, of course, was because the front office was completely different. He's had issues in every locker room he's been in this league. So the hope, I guess, here among fans is that, Ryan and Tim were able to sit him down and kind of say, this is the role you're going to play here. Are you going to accept that? We have these guys coming in, and are you going to be playing second fiddle to them? I think as long as he does that, he's going to be okay this year. I think the Seattle game did kind of show that he is, despite his age, he is on the tail end of his career. He was a bit sluggish. I'm wondering if he needs a few more games to get up to speed. I wonder if he needs a little bit more time than most players simply because of his age and because of his recent injury problems.
That could be a factor, but I imagine that Nelson's going to have to manage his minutes at 35 years old, and Dero's not going to be playing week in and week out. And then I guess, again, sort of filling out the role. I mean, from your perspective, having seen him play, knowing what he's been in MLS, he's always been a very aggressive, very confident, very, he's the kind of guy who will take players on. There's not a ton of those in this league. Can his game shift? Because I don't imagine that he's going to be asked to really do that much in this system.
Yeah, it's going to have to shift. You're absolutely right about that. But I think, the game plan going into this season isn't at all what you're seeing right now. I think Bright DK's injury played into De Rosario starting on the weekend. I'm not sure De Rosario starts that game if Bright DK is available to run up top next to Defoe. And the same goes for the winger they've just signed. They're in the process of signing Izzy Nakajima Ferrin. So that could also play into the depth. Right now, this is a team that lacks depth. This is a team that has to have a De Rosario starting simply for that reason. They've had a few injuries, and I think they're trying to use De Rosario differently, but they're forced to use him more right now simply for that reason.
Let me go to the goalkeeper situation. Julius Cesar comes in, a high-profile move on loan from QPR, trying to get time before the Brazil World Cup. Played pretty well against Seattle. I don't think there's any concern there. I don't remember him being stellar in any sense. Maybe he made a couple of very good saves. How's he working in? I mean, it's almost because it's a loan and because we know what this is for him. It seems very mercenary, and I wonder how really integrated he will be with this team.
He's not a TFC player right now. We've got to make that clear. He's on loan.
Right.
There are earlier indications that it's a full year loan, but it's not. It's a loan that it's going to stretch until the World Cup at least. It's a loan that could end any time after that. Cesar's taken a big risk coming here. He's taken a massive pay cut to fit in under the salary cap, and that's what's allowed him to stay at TFC. So, he's fitting in well, though. I think you saw in the first half, early in the second half, he made that save on Olympic Mark that, really ended up, changing the game. And I think just having that voice at the back, that World Cup steady, Italian Serie A goalkeeper of the year voice at the back, it really makes a difference. No, nothing against Joe Bendik. I think Joe Bendik had a great season last year. I think he's more than capable of filling in. But they're just a different class. I think most people realize that now.
Now, look, again, the headline guys, Bradley Defoe, Cesar, De Rosario. Who else on this team is important in a way that maybe outsiders aren't realizing, or who's going to be, because we know that those guys should be consistent. We don't know how many goals Defoe will score, but we know he'll be dangerous. Who else needs to step up and really play above their previous level in order for TFC to make the playoffs this year?
Yeah, I think we've been saying this for 2 years now, but Donald Henry at the back has to be close to perfect every game if this team's going to succeed this season. He was excellent in Seattle. I kind of put the first goal on him a little bit. If you go back and watch replays, I think he lost his shape a little bit. But everybody's high on him, and that was kind of one of the big question marks. This team was going to go out and spend a lot of money on big players, but they thought, hey, at the back, we got this young kid. We think he's going to be good this year. We're not going to address that situation because we're going to use our homegrown player. And I think when you go into midfield, I think you got, Osorio next to Bradley. Osorio, I think he showed on the weekend that he's capable of producing some magical moments with that first assist he laid to Defoe. So really just the young guys, I guess, the young guys that they're expecting to step up and fill the gaps while they have other big name players eating up a lot of salary cap roster. That's going to be important for those low budget players to be big this season.
Henry and Osorio, both Canadian players. How important is it for TFC to maintain that strong Canadian flavor as they go out spending money?
It's something that a lot of fans hold near and dear to them. It's something that I don't really put too much stake in. I know people that were going to want TFC to develop Canadian national name players, but I don't think that's what their MO is. So, like I said, the diehards are going to want to see a lot of Canadians in this team. I think Toronto is probably doing the best job out of the three teams in Canada of producing those players and keeping that top end talent. So, I think they have the right mix right now, to be honest. I think they have the right mix of Canadian young players and Americans and internationals. So we'll see if they can keep this kind of ratio going.
Now, off the field for TFC, the talk has been the potential expansion of BMO Field. This may include the arrival of the Argonauts into that building to make it their home. What's the status of that initiative right now? Where does it stand, and are we moving forward? Is Toronto moving forward with a potential expansion?
Yeah, so I mean it's a deal that's virtually done, pending a few votes in local government and at the provincial level. So what's going to happen is this stadium is going to go through a complete reconstruction expansion over the course of 2 years, and it's going to expand to 30,000 seats for MLS soccer games, and it's going to expand to 25,000 seats, or decrease to 25,000 seats for CFL games. What Tim Willicke tells me is that the reason this has to happen is in order for TFC to expand and renovate this stadium, the city has made it a stipulation that they let the Argos play there because, of course, BMO Field is owned by the city of Toronto. Just quickly, I mean, Tim Willicke has said that this is going to be a soccer-first venue. There's not going to be any football lines, he says. There's not going to be any Argos logos. There's not going to be any remnants of football at BMO Field while TFC is playing. Some people believe him, some people don't. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt simply because I think everything he said this offseason has come true for TFC. So, we'll see what happens when we get there. But as long as the football lines aren't in the field and the pitch is okay, I think people will be all right with it.
The man certainly backs up his statements. So I suppose that he's built up enough credit in Toronto that until you proven otherwise, you believe him. But I guess we know how sensitive soccer fans are, Curtis, that they get all worked up when it comes to football lines and potentially damage to the field. I mean, that's got to be the other concern.
Yeah, it's also, they're going to a very expensive hybrid surface. I know. I don't have a lot of experience with turf or grass or anything like that, but the club claims that teams around the world use this and it works just fine. Hey, and if we're talking about the surface, it's not going to get much worse than this weekend, so I don't know why people might question moving to something else and seeing if something else works because. Quite frankly, TFC needs this expansion. They need a roof on the stadium. The inclement weather down by Lake Ontario is just too much at times. There's really only 2 or 3 months out of the season that are really, where nice weather is hovering over the stadium. So I think it's going to be a big upgrade. I know, we'll have to see when we get there, but I like the plan the way it sounds right now.
It seems to me, just sort of doing a pros and cons, it seems to me that the improvement, look, TFC, when they get that building full, is a great place, but you put a roof on it and you get another, what would that be? Another 15,000, another 13,000 people in that building. That's going to be one of the best atmospheres in MLS.
Yeah, and it was also one of the reasons why Tim Bezvachenko and Ryan Nelson and Willicke knew they had to get the team right this year. So going forward this year, the only way this expansion works, I think, is if they get the team right this year so they can sell more tickets. Because unfortunately, if things go sour this year and they don't make the playoffs again, it's going to be a really hard sell to sell 30,000 seats in a few years' time. So I think this is all part of the transformation at TFC is getting the field right, getting the product right, getting the stadium right, and then in 2 and 3 years' time, we'll see, if TFC can become and make a club in this on this continent.
All right, DC United in the home opener at BMO Field for the new look Toronto FC, the Tim Willicke branded TFC. You have a prediction for me?
Last night when my buddies around beers, they were saying 3-0 DC. I was saying 1-0 TFC. So I'm not too confident they're gonna, push forward in numbers and put on an offensive display. So, we'll say a goal off the set piece, 1-0 TFC.
There you go. That's exactly where I was going to go. Muck it up a bit, get a set piece goal, and win the home opener. Hopefully that'll get the fans excited there in Toronto. That's Curtis Larson. Go follow him, Kurt Lar, SUN, on Twitter. He's at the Toronto Sun. Thanks for your time as always, Curtis. Appreciate it, man.
All right, man. Yeah, anytime. See you later.
There he goes. That's Curtis Larson talking TFC. Off the top on a big Friday edition of the show. Let's reset. Tell you that the show's on Twitter at Soccer Morning if you need to get in touch with us. Any thoughts on TFC? Any thoughts on DC United? Any thoughts on anything, period. Champions League draw this morning, so we know who's going to be playing who in Europe in the quarterfinals of the 2013-2014 Champions League. Manchester United, Bayern Munich, Madrid, Dortmund, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and Chelsea, PSG. And later in the show, Christian Yari from Bundesliga Fanatic will join us, and Kick TV as well. He'll join us to talk through those Champions League matchups, which are salivating type match. There's the kind of mouth-watering, that's what I meant to say, mouth-watering matchups that people get excited for when it comes to the Champions League. Now I'm looking at the Europa League draw. I guess you can get excited about these too, right? People are excited about the Europa League draw, right, Trevor? No, because Spurs are out. What happened? Alkmaar, Benfica, Lyon, Juventus, Basel, Valencia, Porto, and Sevilla. Look, we know what the Europa League is, and I like to bag on it, but it's still a fun tournament. And those are some nice matchups. And you got to, if you need a hook, all of you American soccer fans, your hook is that Aaron Johansson and Alkmaar AZ Alkmaar are playing Benfica, and that's Jorge Jesus and Benfica. So there we go. All right, let's take a break. Let's come back. We'll talk to Jonathan Tannenwald, the goalkeeper from Philly.com. We're going to touch on several business-related topics. ESPN, their World Cup announcer lineup is out. Don't go anywhere. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Joined now via the magic of Skype, which means that you can see him if you watch the video feed of the program. Mr. Jonathan Tannenwald from Philly.com, who is busy with college basketball, which is his other passion. He's got like 7 Twitter accounts. No, you have like 3, right? You have 3 Twitter accounts.
The most I've ever tweeted from it once is 8.
You have 8 Twitter? Well, I know you occasionally take over some corporate type accounts, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes,
but
I'm one of the coordinators of social media for Philly.com, in addition to my 30 million other things that I do. And I run the news side of things when nobody else is around.
Right. Jonathan is a college basketball guy, specifically a Philly college basketball guy.
Is that allowed?
Sure, absolutely. We've talked on this show, Jonathan, about how okay it is for soccer fans to like other things. It is fine. You don't have to just be, and it's your job too. So, whatever that is, it's your job. You're going to go out and do it. But let's talk a little soccer. Maybe we'll come back around to the college basketball. How about that? We'll talk about your bracket. Let's talk about now. I got you on this show. I mean, we talked about the TV contract with MLS with Matt Yoder from Awful announcing yesterday, and you were tweeting a bit. You have some thoughts and some. So you've heard some things on that front, and we may go down that road again. But for the time being, I want to talk about the World Cup television coverage in the United States. ESPN has this one. They don't have the next 2, and they are giving us what is I don't know if this is an all-star cast. I mean, these are accomplished play-by-play announcers on this list: Ian Darke, John Champion, Adrian Healy, Daniel Mann, Fernando Palomo, and Derek Ray. That's pretty much an all-star cast, is it not?
I think that's about as good in terms of guys that are in the ESPN stable as they're going to get. When you keep in mind that, A, they have to keep somebody in the U.S. to do their MLS games once all their guys leave for Brazil, which they will do a couple of weeks probably before the World Cup, and we don't know who that's going to be yet. Mm-hmm. And B, people have asked me, well, where are the American voices in this? Well, the 2 top American voices are contractually tied to other broadcasters at this point.
Yes, John Strong is an NBC guy. JP Dellacamera, is that the other one you're talking about?
Yeah, John Strong is tied to NBC and Fox, and JP Dellacamera is tied to NBC and Fox.
Right. So right.
They're not doing this.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go down. And I kind of said this. I'm not going to make an issue out of this lineup. I do think that there is an element.
I was going to say, yes, you are.
Well, no, it's not that I have a problem with the way ESPN is going about this. They're a business. Their job is to get as many people watching as they can, and I understand that. And I realize that in the United States, when it comes to high-level soccer, be it European Champions League or something like this, the World Cup, Americans have their ear tuned to a British accent. I mean, that's a fact. I think that says something about American soccer culture, but I don't blame ESPN for not throwing in some token Americans.
Look, one of the things that I would say is, anytime you do anything on a token basis, it's probably not the right way to go about it.
Sure, absolutely.
And B, they're not going to just put a guy in there and say, call a game. They're going to ask their talent, as they do with soccer, to make an investment psychologically in what they're doing.
Okay.
Because they have said that they're going to raise the bar in Brazil higher than it's ever been raised before.
Right.
And I think that there are some people in Bristol, and I think there are some outside observers who think that they might raise it higher than Fox can reach.
Oh, I think that's a given. I mean, based on what we know, until Fox proves otherwise, why would we assume that Fox is even close to capable of matching what ESPN's done? Not just this one, which, as you said, will raise the bar higher than 2010, which was a stellar presentation of the tournament.
And here's the other part of it. You get guys like Derek Ray and Adrian Healy, and I posted yesterday a long interview that I did with Derek recently, who's a terrific guy, and obviously a very familiar voice to soccer fans in America because he was with ESPN for a long time. They know what they're talking about, and they know how to present it to an American audience in a way that doesn't either talk down to the non-soccer fans or up to the elites. They get it, and that is such a hard balance to draw, as we know. But there are relatively few. There are others, but there are relatively few people out there who, at this point, are more qualified to strike the right balance than Ian Darke, Adrian Healy, and Derek Ray.
Okay, I think that's fair. Those are the three names that I look at, and I like Palomo. I mean, I think he's obviously a different voice in this group, but I like those three guys, as you said. They're all in tune with the American thing on a level that John Champion, he just can't be, and that's not a criticism of John Champion. It's just a fact of the matter. And the same thing goes for there are other names who aren't on this and really aren't we're talking about this point, and we know that guys like Arlo White have come here and gotten it and been very good and created that sort of middle ground that you're talking about. And again, I'm not going to make this about Americans. This is solid presentation. This is ESPN doing what they need to do to put on the best presentation possible. And look, it's not like there aren't going to be Americans involved. I mean, Twellman and Lawless and Bob Lee's going to be there, so we know that there's going to be an American presence. It's just not going to be the voice you hear calling the action.
What I care about more is that if they make the sort of, as I said, that sort of emotional investment in not just parachuting in and then leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the philosophy. Look, we know the philosophy has changed at ESPN in recent years about the tone that they set with their World Cup coverage.
Right.
And I think they're going to get this one right. I think they've learned a lot of lessons over the years, and I think that the people behind the scenes at Bristol who have known for a long time how to get it right and the right kinds of people to put out there are finally the ones who are in power now and who are making the decisions. Fair
enough. Again, I'm going to keep my cultural objections to myself for now. This really isn't the venue for it because, again, I have no issue with the quality of the people involved in this endeavor. And as you said, ESPN has learned from their mistakes. I do think that the pendulum swing from Dave O'Brien to this lineup is about as far as you can possibly go. And I don't know that there's middle ground, but it's from one extreme to the other. Gus Johnson's on the Dave O'Brien extreme, by the way, and that's the guy Fox is tapping up. So we'll have to see what that means in another 4 years.
I will give Gus this much credit. He's being groomed over a much longer period of time. He's being groomed over the same number of years that O'Brien was over a period of months.
Yes, no, that was part of the problem with Dave O'Brien. Is he was, as you said, he was parachuted in, but he was parachuted in from his baseball duties, not as someone who knew the game, but was from somewhere else, as you mentioned with the British commentators. So this is an education process for Gus Johnson. Gus Johnson's style is not going to change. His knowledge of the game may change, but his style is not going to change, and that's going to be an interesting juxtaposition when we get to Russia in 2018, provided we go to Russia in 2018. All right, so ESPN is going to do it right here with the television coverage. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Looking forward to this. They've already sort of outlined how they're going to try to balance some of the news coverage that they're going to have to do. Brazil's going to present an interesting challenge, Jonathan, and I don't know if you have any insight into how Bristol's going to handle the fact that Brazil's not going to be the most peaceful place in the world while they're there.
I don't. And I don't want to speculate.
Sure.
Because this is not something that we've seen them ever have to treat before in quite the way that, say, NBC does with the Olympics. And I think we know that NBC doesn't always go into as much depth as others want. But I'm not going to ascribe anything to ESPN or judge them by anybody else's standard at this point, because we just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely not. Let's move on to something else ESPN is involved in, and that's MLS coverage. We talked to Matt Yoder from awfulannouncing.com. You were following along and tweeting. That's the one bit of Soccer Morning I guess you were able to listen to this week.
Yes.
And you have some I don't know that you can certainly necessarily add to his story, which is things that you may or may not have heard, but it's clear that MLS it's clear that there's some sort of hang-up. That doesn't mean it's a bad hang-up. It just means that we're sitting here waiting, twiddling our thumbs. And again, I guess for me, the most interesting part of this, Jonathan, and I think you're in a little bit of a better position to talk about this point than Matt is the implications for the collective bargaining negotiations of this TV deal. What are they if it comes out that they're getting the money that even Garber has sort of hinted this week that they're going to get?
everything's a collective bargaining negotiation, first of all. One of the things that is a collective bargaining negotiation is MLS once again falling flat on its backside in the CONCACAF Champions League. And I'm pretty sure the Players Union was paying attention to that too. Had to sneak that in there somewhere.
I may have written a fairly strongly worded piece that's going to be up to U.S. soccer players this morning on that issue.
Look, it's
well, here
they know the money's out there. If the money is really out there,
right,
then yes, the players are going to go into that room and say, it's time for you to not only spend that money on academies, not only spend that money on stadiums, not only spend that money on expanding roster sizes, which MLS always says will expand the roster sizes that is in the union's interest, which technically it is. It is time to pay the players more.
Yes. Now,
I think, by the way, I think Matt's piece was very on point. Everything that I've heard written about, and it tells you something that not much has changed, over the last weeks, months since John Oran of the Sports Business Journal and I started throwing things out there. My hunch is the biggest sticking point is not Fox Sports 2, but it is the split of U.S. national team home World Cup qualifiers between Fox and ESPN, because that's where the real money is.
The issue for the players when they get to that table and they open up with their first salvo to the league, I don't know that it's necessarily about a number, about the dollars. I mean, that's part of it. That them having some understanding of what the league is bringing in and what's going out the door will certainly impact the negotiations. But there has to be some sort of belief on the part of the players that it's not that MLS needs to outspend Mexico or anybody else. It's that they need to bring their total outlay on player salaries in line with some of these other leagues in terms of percentage. I mean, look, you don't want to.
I saw that from Dan Dickinson yesterday. I think it was of Reddit and Gothamist and all the other places he writes for. It's not just about how much money you spend on players total. It's about how much you spend on each player.
Okay.
It is about depth of rosters, absolutely, and it is about the size of the salary cap. But at a certain point, you have to pay the players more. It's not getting any cheaper to live in New York and San Francisco and Boston and Washington and many other places in the league. And never mind the cities in Vancouver, in Canada, where the taxes are higher, Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal. So I would, if I was the players union, and they're not that talkative. They've started to change that a little bit in recent months, but they are not. They do not fight their battles through the press, which, let it be said, only hurts the press. It doesn't hurt them.
Okay.
It hurts them a little bit, but
look, Eddie Pope's the strong silent type. I get it.
Right.
So yeah,
if I was them, I would make the argument that I think has been used successfully in particular the NHL and Major League Baseball in recent years, which is it is in the owner's interest to spend more money. It is, and it's interesting to me that there's sort of this already this emotional build around these negotiations, won't really kick into high gear until after this season is completed. We won't really go through the motions of lockout or strike or all of that stuff, which we probably will, because everybody remembers the last time we did this. We won't really do that until after the season, and yet we're already getting some of, and it's specific quarters, and it's the hardcore, and it's journalists who are saying, I see bad things. And in that, what they mean is that the owners are going to dig in because they can point to growing, at least for their own business purposes, they can point to growing attendance, they can point to all these stadiums, they can point to a TV deal and say, we're doing fine. Why do we need to go spend more money? And the opposite. I think if I were them, I would have done a little better job at not conflating the first, second, and third persons grammatically when talking about the referees lockout.
Okay.
I think they used the word "we" a little too many times.
Okay.
It sort of gave away what this was about.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that made them look very good.
And then there's also that sense that there's a split among the ownership groups, the owners, that is along the more aspirational line, the ambitious lines of a Merritt Paulson or a Heineman or whoever, a Leiweke, certainly in charge of MLSE's property, and some of the more conservative names, and whether or not that split will go in the direction of the young Turks or the old guard. I don't know that it's going to be as clean as that, Jonathan. I mean, I think it's easy to paint.
That's the part that I find really interesting, because there are plenty of owners out there in the league now who will say it is in our interest to spend more money and we need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just doing a head count sort of real quick here of the standings. I think you're probably getting to a point now where at least half the league half the owners in the league would say we need to spend a lot more on players to improve a lot of the things in this league that we want to improve.
I think
I can't tell you though whether you have to have a majority plus one or a unanimous vote in that room to get stuff done.
That's a good question. And the other question that I have is, it's one thing to say we need to go spend a lot more money. It's another thing to have that money, or when they're looking at their bottom lines individually. I mean, just because Merritt Paulson is young and ambitious doesn't mean he's going to want to go out and spend $20 million in salary next season. Same thing goes with Anthony Prettycourt in Columbus, or any number, some of the, again, Heineman and that ownership group at Sporting. It doesn't mean that they're, I don't know their positions. I don't know what the ink looks like on their ledger sheets. But I'm just saying, it's one thing to say it. It's another thing to want, to actually pull the trigger to do it. And if it requires deficit spending, will they do it? I don't know that that's the case. I think
this is what comes back to the television money, though. Because I was having a debate with an old friend of mine who's a marketing research, analyst type. He's not involved in soccer at all. In fact, he's not even a soccer fan. I was trying to explain to him how the TV rights deals in MLS are going compared to other leagues. Mm-hmm. And I said to him something that I'm pretty sure is true, which is that the TV networks understand that they are going to be bankrolling the player signings, that there is no other factor out there that is going to improve the quality of Major League Soccer except their own money. And there are executives at ESPN, and obviously MLS I was about to say, but there are executives at ESPN and Fox that understand that and want to see MLS specifically as being the top division, the most prominent league in American soccer. Mm-hmm. They want to see it succeed.
Okay.
And so they are putting more money on the table than a free market might otherwise merit for it. Right. And I just, I think that that money then they've got to make sure that money goes to players and not to other things.
Yeah. No, and I think you said that on this show before, and I hope that that's a major factor in what happens in these CBA negotiations. And the other thing and you mentioned the Champions League, and as I said, I've got some harshly worded phrases in regards to this Champions League situation that MLS continues to find itself in year after year. And it wouldn't be so much of an issue. I mean, it would be frustrating. We would kind of get angry about it or wonder why teams couldn't get over this Mexican hump. It would be bad, but it wouldn't be as bad if the league wasn't making an issue out of it. And I know people want to put this on Garber. This is clearly we want to win it for the league situation. And they've put in rules and they've given these teams advantages that qualify. But at some point, if that's not working, and you can't wait 10 years to find out if a little bit more of allocation money is working to get a team over the hump in the Champions League, at some point they're just going to have to put up the money to make these teams better.
And you said something interesting there, which is the league wants this to matter, mm-hmm. and if it matters. And I think the if it matters part is important to stop on for a second. Because I don't think, and I have a lot of other people out there don't think, that the league is just constructing the CONCACAF Champions League as some abstract thing that it ought to win. And I don't think, they may overvalue sort of the PR gains from potentially getting the World Club Championship. But in the greater sort of sphere of things, yes, I think the CONCACAF Champions League is important.
Well, there's no other way to measure the progression of the league in a competitive way. That's the,
right.
it's
and
the only
if you
way.
Want the top talent in, never mind Europe, if you want the top talent in North America, in Honduras, in El Salvador, Jamaica, et cetera, they're watching.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, what was I going to say? If you want to eventually have the money and you put the money on the table, then you want to have the prestige so that when Javier Hernandez decides that he's done at Manchester United, MLS can get him. I think you do it by being you announce your prestige and not just being a payday, but you being more legitimate by winning the CONCACAF Champions League and beating some Mexican clubs along the way.
It's clearly, again, I mean, it's the only competitive way for MLS to measure its progress as an on-field product. There is no other. Friendlies don't do it. Those are friendlies. Preseason tournaments, they don't do it. This is the only way to do it, to measure that progress, and that's why there's so much importance placed on it. And I think it's interesting to see how fans have taken a certain segment of the fans have taken up that mantle and are treating that tournament with so much weight. When I think, and I'm on the record of saying this on Twitter the other night when these teams fell, and I would have said it if a team had won it. I don't think it's a tipping point. I don't think it's a game changer in terms of soccer's relevance here. I mean, I suppose for players and for players abroad who may be interested in other little thing to put in that column, but I just don't see it as sort of, oh, look, MLS has won the Continental title. They're going to the Club World Cup. Finally, we've made it. It doesn't work that way.
The driver of soccer's relevance for fans is the World Cup. The driver of soccer's relevance for players is on the field. Mm-hmm. And as you say, on the field, the best measuring stick we've got is the CONCACAF Champions League.
Yeah. It's interesting. All right, while I got you here, Jonathan, just for a couple more minutes, New York City FC unveiled their badge yesterday. Definitely have to cover this. They had two choices. One was that funky shield shape that apparently is on the New York City seal, which no one knows what that looks like. I had to go look it up on Wikipedia to find out what the hell they were talking about. And that circle, which is inspired by the subway token. It's a circle. Fine.
I have an old New York subway token on my desk as a memento. Okay. It is definitely inspired by the New York subway token.
No, I realize that. I understand. It's just funny that it's a circle, but
I like it.
It's not bad. And I know that there are people out there saying it's the best in MLS right away. That's not a really high standard, to be honest with you. And it's great. It's fine. And now they have a badge, and they're pumping out the memorabilia and the gear. And I saw, was it you that tweeted the scarf is $34?
Yeah, the scarf is $35. The some of the other stuff is actually reasonably priced, but the scarf I think was a little on the high end.
Look, scarves are sort of my thing, I guess, and your thing. I think you got a nice scarf collection working there in Philly. So I don't know. We're gonna drop $35 on a New York City FC scarf.
Things are more expensive in New York.
Okay. Do you have rules about your scarves? Because I know our friend Brian Strauss has rules about his scarf collection. He has to go to a game and get the scarf at the game.
No, I don't.
Okay, good. Because I think it's much more, it's less neurotic to just have this. Sorry, Brian. Wow, sorry.
My rule is that if it's a team I really don't like, then I probably won't buy it. But I try to have something from every team in MLS.
Yeah, and I'm lucky enough doing this show and having it become sort of a thing to have been given several scarves. In fact, I think if I think about it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think all of these are either gifts or the team that's on them has sent them to me. So I'm in a unique position not to have to worry about dropping $35 on scarves very often. But now with New York City FC, what is this? I mean, okay, not what does this mean? Because I don't expect you to have any insight into what New York City FC's current state is. But we watched this situation. They unveil the badge. Jason Christ flies in from Manchester, opens the door. I imagine he's flying right back out. And they don't have a stadium situation settled yet, less than a year from opening day for them. And they, I know players will come later, but and I think there are very smart people there, Jonathan. It's just the stadium thing worries me a lot.
It doesn't worry me as much because land politics in New York are just so screwy and impossible that none of us in the peanut gallery or anywhere outside of however many people there are in the New York City Council, we can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
They have to go and fight the battle behind the scenes and do all the things that they have to do. And all we can do is sit back and watch. Literally all we can do is sit back and watch.
Well, that leads us to we've gone through this already, but it leads us to the question of why give this team to New York in the first place? Why have it based in New York in the first place? If none of this was lined up, we went through that whole process trying to put a stadium in Queens.
Well, I think it was lined up. And then you have, as democracy tends to do, you have change in the politics.
But as you said, that's New York. This is a company and a corporation and a league based in the city they're trying to do business in for a stadium. They have to know that until the rebar is in the concrete, nothing is done. And even then, you have the potential for it to fall apart.
I think the answer is that everything in New York takes more time. That's the easy part. B, and a lot of people in other markets don't like it when I say this. And I'm no fan of New York as a place to live, work, etc. It drives me nuts. But if you want to be truly recognized in New York, you do have to be in the 5 boroughs. That is not an option. That is not a choice. You cannot be in North Jersey unless you're the Giants or the Jets. You have to be in the 5 boroughs, and they are going to do whatever it takes to get into the 5 boroughs. And that, I think they're absolutely right.
I'm with that, and I've maintained that it's a smart idea to have a team in the city of New York. It's just that again, and maybe you needed Manchester City's name and the Yankees' name and the $100 million fee and all of the things that come with their pedigree in order to get things moving. I suppose that's the case. It just seems like cart before the horse, Jonathan, and I think that's what worried a lot of fans when this deal was struck. Is, well, wait, they don't have a stadium, and what's happening, and how are they going to get this done? And okay, every time they bring up an idea, it's shot down, or there's a community group that's protesting, or a new mayor who shoots it down. I mean, de Blasio has absolutely shown no signs of being even willing to work with the Yankees and Manchester City on this.
It is cart before the horse, but it's the only market in the country where I condone it.
Okay. All right, fair enough. There you go. You're on the record. You're a New York backer. You're backing New York.
Yeah. That's not good.
No,
I live in a city where I'm not supposed to do that.
Exactly. Jonathan Tannenwald from Philly.com. Several different topics there. Thank you for your time as always, Jonathan. I appreciate it, man.
Pleasure. I hope your bracket is still standing.
I don't actually have a bracket. Imagine that.
Good. Yeah, that's a good soccer fan.
Stress-free. No, it's not even that. I'm stress-free. I watched every game yesterday, pretty much. I mean, I flipped around. I stayed up until 1:30 in the morning. What was the last game? New Mexico and San Diego State.
I couldn't make it because I had to be up at real early this morning to come to work.
You might be able to see the bags if you look closely. All right, thank you for the time, Jonathan. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines ahead of Christian Niari from Bundesliga Fanatic at 11 o'clock. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Back on Soccer Morning. Phone lines now open. It is that part of the show We got about 10 minutes. Christian Iari will join us from Bundesliga Fanatic to talk over the Champions League draw for the quarterfinals and whatever else is happening in the world of German football. But for the time being, we're going to open up the phone lines, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about the Seattle Sounders separating their business operation from the Seattle Seahawks. This is big. It's one of those big news items that I have no idea what it actually means. I don't. I have very little understanding of how this is going to change anything. And in fact, Adrian Hanauer, GM and co-owner of the Seattle Sounders, has said it's not going to change a lot. Nothing's going to change. They have a 5-year lease at CenturyLink Field, a 5-year deal, I suppose. I guess at least is the right word. So they're not going to be leaving that stadium anytime soon. You do wonder what will happen after that. He has said, we're here. And in fact, I think the Seahawks end of it was, the Sounders are a tenant and we're very happy to have them and we're going to be continuing to work with them. Now, the other issue here, again, this is good and I am not understanding exactly what it means. And I imagine that there's got to be some concern on the other side. Hanauer says they're taking the training wheels off. That's great. Ride on your own. Sounders, go down the road, wobbly for a little while and figure it out. I mean, 35,000 season ticket holders. I think they're okay business-wise. But then you wonder about, again, the stadium and whether or not the rent's going to change or what exactly this means from a partnership standpoint and all of those corporate sponsors in the area. How many of them signed on with the Sounders because they were attached to the Seahawks? I don't know how many, maybe none. 718, you're on the air.
Hey, Jason, what's going on? It's Eddie in Brooklyn.
Hey, what's up, Eddie?
Not much. I hate to kind of switch topics on you.
Do it.
I kind of get annoyed when people do that, but I'm gonna have to do it right now. I kind of want to go back to the Champions League because I've been listening to everybody's opinion, but I want to ask a question I haven't really gotten an answer to. Mm-hmm. Why can't Mexican and MLS clubs meet in the group stage?
Because CONCACAF doesn't want them to.
Okay.
I mean that's literally the reason, as far as I'm aware. I think it's they'll make some show about coefficient, kind of, not exactly like coefficients in Europe, but sort of these are our two biggest leagues. We don't want teams from those leagues to meet in the group stage. We want them to meet in the knockout rounds. I think that's it. I mean, it's just a CONCACAF thing.
I find that extremely ironic because everybody says that money's the reason why MLS can't advance this because of the salary cap, but I think this is the actual reason because if we played Mexican clubs in the group stage, now the roles are reversed. Now they're in preseason form and we're in mid-season form. And maybe that gives us a little bit more of an advantage as compared to how it is right now when we have to meet.
That's an interesting thought. I never thought about it that way, but clearly, Eddie, the people in general, I imagine both sides of the border, put much more weight on a knockout tie than they do on a group stage match. And it would be interesting to see if they flipped that, if they got rid of that prescription, if they said Mexican teams and MLS teams can be drawn in the same group. But, every now and then, MLS teams get a quote unquote tough draw without a Mexican team, and we sort of fret over whether they can get out of it. So there is an element of MLS has just got to get better, Eddie.
No, I agree. I just think that rule is absolutely ridiculous because I can't imagine the Champions League operating where no French team can beat an English team. No, you can't happen.
Right. I mean, the only thing I'm aware of there is you can't have two teams from the same league drawn into the same group.
And that's fine. That's understandable. Yeah. But, to say that Liga MX and MLS can't be in the same group, I think that should go. And not only that, it's set up really for MLS teams to take advantage of this, but they don't take the group stage as seriously as they should. I mean, seeding matters in this. What if the Galaxy go ahead and they get a point in El Salvador, and then maybe they're not a 6 seed, maybe they're a 4 seed. I'm surprised.
Absolutely,
there's a Costa Rican team in the semifinals.
Yeah, well,
how are they in it?
I think that's partly a matter of the draw, right? They ended up with the Robbie Unido.
Well, they got a 4 seed, and they had a Mexican team in their group, and yet they still managed to get a 4 seed. What's going on with these other MLS clubs that they can't get at least that?
Well, again, I mean, I think it's a general comment on the quality of MLS teams when they go outside of their comfort zone. I mean, look, I think the league's getting better, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that MLS teams are on par with Mexican teams. And there's other elements to this too. I mean, despite everything that's kind of come out in the press and the debate, it's not a debate right now. It's just not. But it doesn't mean that MLS isn't worth your time. I mean, that's the other thing that frustrates me is people who, because MLS falls to Mexican teams in the Champions League, it's some sort of sign that MLS isn't worthwhile. That's not the case. It's just a matter of growing and getting bigger. And let's put pressure on MLS to spend more money. Let's all do that. I mean, I think the general fan base wants to see the league get better. Let's, send emails to your congressman. I don't know. Well, do whatever you need to do. They need to know that when they go into those negotiations come this fall, it's on them to fix this problem by spending more money. And then the league gets better and the teams get better. And instead of Benedetto playing down in Mexico, he's playing here. Right?
No, I agree. The league has to get better overall for us to get better in Champions League. I think it's just going to end up being that way. We can't just cater to the tournament and then hope that it trickles down to ours. We got to take care of ourselves first.
Right.
I'm just saying
right.
We still have to, it's still our responsibility to do better in the group stage, because there's no excuse for being seeded 7th and then having somebody like Alajuelense seeded 4th or Radio Unido seeded 5th.
I agree. But that's a function of the American attitude too, right? I mean, Bruce Arena is notorious for not caring about knockout competitions or cup competitions. He and Dom Kinnear, his job is to get them into the playoffs and win an MLS Cup in Houston. And I don't know that we are ever going to get past. Dom Kinnear being Scottish should have some appreciation, but for whatever reason, these guys are given a mandate, and their owners being American and their owners wanting to go win the league. That's where they put most of their effort. I mean, look, it's not like Bruce put out a B or C team against Tijuana. They just weren't prepared, and you saw the cracks. And I pointed this out when I talked about this on, I guess yesterday, Eddie. The issue is it's 1 or 2 or 3 spots that Mexican teams are built to exploit. So when you have slow Leonardo, who doesn't make a decision quick enough, or decides for whatever reason to come out and try to head a ball 20 yards from his box when he's not going to get there, that's what we see. And Mishak Jerome, and again, I'm picking on him for Sporting, gets absolutely abused by Marco Fabian. I expect him to get abused. Upgrade your reserve right back. I mean, I don't know.
No, I agree. But I just want people to stop using the salary excuse, or that the Liga MX has more money, or stop using that, and let's start putting the pressure on these coaches who in the group stages aren't taking it as seriously as they should, and then they put themselves in the positions that they're in the knockout stage that they're not expected to get through. But you wouldn't be in that position if you would have taken it seriously in the first place.
Right, fair enough.
So I don't want to let them off the hook completely. No. That has to be shifted back towards the group stage. This is a whole competition, not just knockout round.
Yeah, no, look, I think that I think there are a lot of elements to this, why MLS continues to fail in this tournament. I don't think it's, and look, RSL's run was great, but they didn't beat any Mexican teams in it. And
yeah, but they also got a result in Mexico.
That's true, they did. And then Seattle actually, Seattle went down and managed to hold on, and they got a result in a tie with in a series with the Mexican team. So it's happened before. It's just that haven't gone all the way. And we'll have to see if, again, MLS needs to, instead of treating the symptoms, they need to treat the disease, is essentially what we're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Eddie. I appreciate it, man.
No problem, man. Okay.
In fact, Bill Reese, Bill on Twitter, saying that CONCACAF doesn't use coefficients. I knew that. I was just trying to explain it in some way that made sense why MLS teams and Mexican teams can't be drawn in the same groups. But he's done one himself. I'm not sure what this is based on, but I'm looking at a CONCACAF Champions League coefficient. He's got Mexico way ahead of the United States, but those are 1-2. Costa Rica, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, Panama, Trinidad, down the line. Canada's not, what Canada gets one spot. So there you go. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we will move on. We'll talk UEFA Champions League with our friend Christian Yari from Bundesliga Fanatic. Soccer Morning, North American Soccer Network, NASN.TV. How's your soccer? Be right back.
Welcome back to Soccer Morning on NASN with Jason Davis.
Joined now by our friend Christian Yari from Bundesliga Fanatic, and also Kick TV's Champions League coverage, which is why you're here. I mean, I'm kind of over talking about the Bundesliga, Christian. There's nothing's going to change. I'm a guy who wants to talk about the table, but there's nothing to talk about there. Well, I guess the bottom maybe.
Yeah, are you in the camp that the league is becoming boring now?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, there can obviously be good games and clearly interesting things are happening. It's just when you have one team that is so far above everybody else and has created such a gap, the fact that the title is a foregone conclusion, it does take some sting out of it. Clearly it does.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. And I mean, that's kind of the debate now. I think I've seen at least 800 articles this week about whether, Bayern's dominance is good or bad for the league, including one I wrote myself. But I think it's a good discussion. I think any discussion that directs people towards the Bundesliga or German football is positive. Even if that's in the context of Bayern kind of just outdoing everyone. I don't mind it. I think this is the best German team of all time, in my opinion. Right. So it's not a matter of the rest of the league being bad. I mean, this is just Bayern being really, really good.
I there's obviously something to that. And I will say, and you being based where you are in New York and Bayern having recently opened up an office in New York and playing in the All-Star game in Portland this summer against the MLS All-Stars, it's clear that there's a push to get into the American market. And if anything, if I know anything about American sports fans, Christian, I know that they will go root for a winner. So there's certainly something to be said for Bayern Munich capturing some of that American enthusiasm for the bandwagon.
Yeah, and a spotlight on Bayern is inevitably a spotlight on the Bundesliga. So, if Bayern are getting attention because they're just destroying their competition, then, it's going to lead other people to kind of take a look at the rest of the league as well. And I think that's a good thing in the long run. And
somebody will inevitably, and this has already happened, but somebody will inevitably become a Dortmund fan because they're sort of, the yin to Bayern's yang. Not really, but you know what I mean.
Of course. People love to root against the big dog, and there's in the Bundesliga more than anything, there's all these feel good stories, with the smaller clubs who have these kind of really, really interesting backgrounds and histories, and these really, really good youth setups and academies. So there's plenty to like for people who don't know much about the league.
You know what? We hadn't intended on doing this, and I definitely want to get to the UEFA Champions League quarterfinal draw. Yeah. But while you're here to get your expertise, something I've been meaning to look more into is what's happening in Leipzig with Red Bull or RB Leipzig. I guess they're not technically Red Bulls like Leipzig. What's
kind of Red Bull, but not really.
Kind of Red Bull. And I think that for people who aren't aware, the ownership rules in Germany would normally preclude a company like Red Bull from buying a team and operating it the way they do Red Bull New York. So what's the problem here?
The problem is really the culture, because Red Bull originally bought the team, but then they decided that it was kind of an infringement on the team and the culture and the rules in Germany. So they decided to kind of change their name. They're now Rasenballsport, which is kind of, there's no real direct translation, but it basically means it's kind of an interpretation of like a football pitch club, Leipzig.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So they're trying to kind of gloss over the fact that they have this huge corporate entity kind of funding them, but everyone's aware of it. Everyone despises them, but they're doing really, really well, and they're probably going to get promoted to the second division, and they're probably going to get promoted to the first division in 2 or 3 years' time. They're pumping quite a bit of money into the club. They've bought quite a few good players above the third division level, and I think it's just a small example, though. It's not something I think that's a worry in German football. I don't think this is going to happen with many other teams. I think Leipzig especially is a city that has a great football culture and has a great history. And there's kind of a vacuum that there are all these people who wanted to go see their team, but they weren't performing well. And now with Red Bull involved, they actually have a successful team that people can go watch.
Are they going? Are the fans sort of embracing being the villains?
I don't know if do any fans of a successful team really do that? I think.
Absolutely. There are clubs and across many sports around the world where the fans are more than happy to be loathed by everybody else, regardless of the reasons. And I don't know that the Leipzig fans are just going to jump on board with this sort of corporatization of their club, but they may sort of revel in being, the bad guys in German football.
I think maybe that's more of a function of being at the absolute top than a club that's still fighting to get through the lower divisions.
Okay. Fair enough.
But maybe that will be the case eventually. I mean, I don't think they're going to get any. They're definitely going to pick up some fans, but they're going to the ratio between people who will like them and hate them is going to be very, very disproportionate as they move up.
I'm just thinking. I keep thinking about Raiders fans. More than happy to be hated by everybody else, and their team is terrible.
Is that the case for them?
Yes, absolutely. Raiders fans revel in the fact that nobody likes them. Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the Champions League draw. Manchester United gets through Olympiacos and ends up getting drawn against Bayern Munich. This is not a good situation for Manchester United and David Moyes if they planned on progressing further in this tournament. But is there any reason to think this won't be a walkover? I mean, how difficult will United make it for Bayern Munich?
I don't know. I mean, on paper, this is obviously Bayern are in the semifinals, but you can't really take anything for granted. And I think at this stage, anyways, and United surprised me against Olympiacos. I've got to say, I was expecting them maybe to win or squeak out a win, but not enough to progress to the quarters. So the fact that they really, really put on a show and played with the intensity that they really haven't shown in any game this season really, really surprised me, and it made me believe that there's something left in this team, and the players have something to prove, especially now, especially with the season winding down, them potentially losing out on the Champions League spot in the league. The players are out to prove a point, and especially against a team like Bayern, United don't really have anything to lose, and that's a really, really dangerous situation for Bayern to come into.
It does set up. I mean, the narrative kind of sets up for United to be and this is so weird about Manchester United, to be scrappy, to make it tough, to maybe be more physical than they would otherwise be, and make it difficult on Bayern Munich. But I mean, everybody expects Bayern to get through. The other German team left in competition, Borussia Dortmund, drawn against Real Madrid. That pretty much, I think, in most people's minds, eliminates the possibility of a repeat final.
Yeah, I mean, if we are going to say there's a certain kind of result here, it's probably Madrid knocking Dortmund out. I don't really see them standing much of a chance. I know there was some optimism from Klopp when he was asked to give his reaction to it. He pointed to their. I mean, they played 4 times last season and they beat them twice. They only lost 1 game. So they have a good record against them, but situations have completely changed this season. I mean, and they're going to be without Lewandowski in the first leg, which is, the worst thing that could have happened to them with all the other injuries already kind of limiting them. So it's almost an impossible task for Dortmund. And I think, I personally worry that this could be similar to what Madrid did to Schalke.
Oh, well, I mean, look, if you're going to go in against Madrid, the last thing you want is to have the walking wounded as your back line, and that's been the issue for Dortmund.
It's not just it's the back line, but it's everything else. I mean, they're missing 3 players in the first leg. They're going to be missing 4 attacking players that started the Champions League final. They'll be, I think it's up to 6 or 7 players now that started in the Champions League final last year against Bayern that won't be playing against Madrid. So it's more than half the team that's out, and they're already very thin as far as their depth goes, and Klopp is forced to have all these really young guys and inexperienced players on the bench backing up his first team, and that's just not a good situation. Especially with the pressure being put on Dortmund in the league now, because you have Schalke who were in 7th place at the end of the first half of the season, and now they're just a point behind Dortmund. And Dortmund is not going to want their rivals to kind of beat them for 2nd place right at the end of the season.
The other two quarterfinal matchups, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, so you have an all-Spanish matchup there. I think a lot of people are giving Atletico Madrid a good chance of beating Barcelona. This doesn't seem to be the impossible-to-beat invincible Barcelona of the past, and Simeone has continually found ways to win games.
Yeah, I think that's in my opinion, that's 50-50. I wouldn't give Barcelona the advantage there. I think Atletico are. I mean, I know Barcelona really, really played well against them in the league this season, but I think Atletico Madrid are the kind of team that they're my Dortmund in the competition this season. If I had to make an analogy, I think they can go all the way to the final. I think they can eliminate any team left in the competition.
That's interesting. The other quarterfinal matchup, Chelsea and PSG. I think, look, Manchester United.
Speaking of fans that are kind of proud of their standing.
Okay, interesting. Look, Bayern Munich and Manchester United. We're all pretty sure Bayern Munich's getting through. Dortmund and Madrid. Madrid's firepower. We expect them to get through. Barcelona, Atletico Madrid is a toss-up, as you said. This is the most intriguing matchup of the round for me, and partly because how quickly PSG has risen, how much money they've spent, how much firepower they have going up against Jose Mourinho, who made his reputation on winning matchups like this when nobody thought he could.
Yeah, and who never really gets knocked out at the quarterfinal stage.
Never.
So, I mean, his record is amazing, and this is a huge test for them. I think PSG is right now. I think last year they weren't ready, and the year before that certainly not. But I think this year I think the pieces have finally come together for them. They put together a really, really strong squad beyond their first 11 as well. I mean, they have players like Lucas Moura coming off the bench. They have an extremely, extremely good midfield, which I don't think gets enough credit. I know all the attention is on Ibra and Cavani, but I think their midfield is one of the probably top 3 in Europe, in my opinion. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if PSG give Chelsea a lot of trouble.
It's just a nouveau riche matchup. It's just there's so many storylines.
Stinks of money. And
man, it's amazing stuff. Let me come back to what may or may not happen with Dortmund in this tournament, and then obviously in the league, going to be shooting for second, as you said. And the possibility, like Manchester United is probably going to change managers. I mean, I don't know that I put a bet on it right now, but it's difficult to imagine Moyes lasting that much longer. They're still going to finish, 7th, 6th in the league. They're not going to win this competition. They're just not good enough. If they made a change, Manchester United made a change. Number one, do you believe that they would go after somebody like Klopp? And number two, is there any possibility that Jurgen Klopp would consider leaving Dortmund right now?
No, he was asked this not too long ago, and he said he's very happy, blah, blah, blah. Of course he said he's very happy. He wouldn't say otherwise, but I think Klopp is not the kind of guy who would be kind of courted away easily, and certainly not by a team that's struggled so much. I think when anyone outside of United looks at the situation there, they'll see that it's kind of untenable. Yeah, but there's a lot of...
Think of the resources, though, Christian. I mean, if nothing else, that Manchester United will be able to compete monetarily with anybody in that league and certainly close to anybody in Europe.
Very true, very true. But think also of the pressure. Think of having to follow in Fergie's footsteps and yeah,
but that's the nice thing. He doesn't have to. That's Moyes' problem.
It's Moyes' problem, but I think the shadow is so large and looming that it will kind of envelop anyone who follows. Unless someone comes in right away and is successful. I think the standards have been set so high that the comparisons are always going to be made, and that's why I think there's really no point in switching managers, not this late in the season, and maybe not even next year, because then United, the club with this tradition and history and constant pressure to perform and succeed and win, do they really want a wasted year? And that's exactly what would be the case if they get rid of Moyes. I think they should stick with him for another year, maybe support him, maybe get him a consultant or someone who has a better, I guess, eye for what the team needs, because I don't think Moyes necessarily brought in the right players. So they'll need a lot of changes there, but I think it would be a waste of a year, and it would just maybe take them back another step if they change managers.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, and normally I'm the type that says the leash is too short. Give managers some time. I suppose that the difference that I see between David Moyes and Jurgen Klopp is that Klopp's won things in one of the best leagues in the world, and David Moyes has this sort of aspirational thing, and he did okay at Everton, and he maximized what resources they had, and he's not on the same. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying David Moyes is a much worse coach than Jurgen Klopp, but I think the profile is so significantly different that Klopp might not have to deal with the things that Moyes has dealt with, and Klopp can certainly handle himself in front of a camera and in a microphone, whereas Moyes has crumbled under that pressure at United.
Yeah, I think if anything, Klopp will definitely not kind of falter under the pressure. He's just always comfortable regardless of the situation. I mean, I've never really seen anything in the media or in the press get to Klopp. Yeah, he'll have a freak out on the sidelines every now and then,
which I think United needs, by the way.
Yes,
I think they need that.
The emotion.
Yes. Yeah. Look, I mean, it doesn't matter if Klopp is not willing to leave or wants to leave, and I suppose that if I'm going to try to rationalize a reason he can't crawl in his head, it's that, things are sort of stratifying in Germany, and not that it's always going to be this way. And a title is so recent for Dortmund that I guess you can't really feel like you can't compete. But the way things have gone recently with Bayern Munich sort of, consolidating their position, and this year with the point difference, and I guess there's always the Champions League, and I suppose there's always a chance, but it just seems like, why not that's a challenge in its own right to try to beat Bayern Munich in Germany, but why not take on a new challenge at a club that has everything going for it and a potential to go win the European Cup?
Yeah, in other words, what's left to do in Germany, right?
But possibly, and not necessarily because he's done everything, but because Bayern Munich's going to make it so difficult.
Very true. But this is where I think we see a difference in Klopp compared to most other managers. I mean, when you look at a Mourinho, he's just such a competitive guy, and not saying that Klopp isn't, but Mourinho is very much the kind of guy, if he achieves something, he won't hesitate to move on to the next challenge. Whereas Klopp, I think it's more important for him to be comfortable where he is, to be supported, to be in the right working environment, to have the right guys around him, to have the right players around him, and that's very much the case in Dortmund. I mean, he said it's a perfect environment for him to coach and thrive, and he's happy. And as long as that's the case, I don't know if Klopp necessarily needs to be at another club to compete for titles. I think what makes Klopp great is the fact that he thinks he can do it with Dortmund. Mm-hmm. Despite having this behemoth Bayern team just looming over him, and I think that's what makes him special. It's definitely what took Dortmund from kind of a fledgling team to a really, really great, consistent European presence. It's that kind of attitude that Klopp had. He's the eternal optimist. Mm-hmm. And, it's something that's very much rubbed off on Dortmund. And it's something that the club and the city embraced so much. And I think he sees that. I think he sees how much he's loved there and needed. And, I think if for a coach, especially in football at this level, I think that's the most important thing, right? It's to have the sentiment that you are having an impact and that you're wanted and that your work has meaning.
Mm-hmm. Well, he certainly could become the Alex Ferguson of Dortmund. I mean, that's if he decides that that's the path he wants to take, there's no reason for them to ever make a change. I mean, short of a disaster, and you can't imagine that. So why not? I suppose. I mean, again, it's sort of people want to project their competitive nature or their aspirations on these figures, and it doesn't always work. And again, I can't crawl in Jurgen Klopp's head, and he shows all signs of being happy and staying in Dortmund. It's just when people consider what's out there for him to attempt, they can conceive of a reason for him to go take that challenge. And as you said, he's not Jose Mourinho. It's just not.
No. I mean, I more than anyone, I would love to see Klopp in a different atmosphere. I would love to see him in England and responding to those those pressers and all those questions. I think it would just be amazing. It would be comedic gold. But I mean, just to think of Klopp being a presence in Dortmund and in the Bundesliga, it's such a good thing for the league, and it's exactly what the league needs now with Bayern. I think the other clubs, as much progress as they are making and have made, I think Dortmund are still the only team that are really, really close to Bayern. And Bayern may be dominant for another 2-3 years, but I think if Klopp remains at Dortmund, I think Dortmund will remain competitive as well. And if he does leave, I can't really see anyone coming in and replacing him. I really can't.
Before I let you go, going back and looking at the Champions League draw, Bayern Munich to get through Manchester United, let's just assume that happens. Who could they draw in the next round that would actually give them trouble in the semis? Or is it a walk to the final from there? Is it Madrid?
I think
Madrid in the semis?
If they draw the two Madrid sides, I think they, in my opinion, are the two teams that could, take Bayern out of the equation. I think those are the two teams that could get to the final. I think this Madrid team is at its strongest I've ever seen them, even better than the Galacticos in the early 2000s. So, to me, this year is almost inevitable that it's a Madrid Bayern final. I mean, they've played each other more than any other teams in the competition's history, but they've never played each other in the final. So to me, that's what I really, really want to see.
Yeah, and look, you can't imagine. I mean, whatever you want to call it conspiracy theory or whatever UEFA is going to do, they're not going to draw those two teams together in the semifinals. They're just not going to do that.
Well, they've played each other in the semis countless
I realize that, but I'm talking about in this particular iteration of the tournament. I just can't imagine, because they are the two juggernauts right now that everybody wants to see on the biggest stage. I'm being conspiratorial here. If you did it completely random, there's every chance in the world that they could be drawn together in the semis. And again, we're going ahead and putting Bayern into the semis and Madrid past Dortmund, and something could happen. You never know, right? Maybe.
No, you never know. I'm happy to root for the conspiracy.
Okay.
This case.
There you go. Christian Yari from Bundesliga Fanatic. Also, check out his Champions League work on Kick TV. Appreciate the time, Christian, as always, man.
Pleasure, man. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks a lot. There he goes. There goes Christian. Good Champions League Bundesliga chat. Last couple minutes of the show. Phone line's still open. 347-756-6276. I'm being reminded on Twitter by Brendan that the USL Pro season starts this weekend. I just went ahead and pulled up the schedule. Let me see if I can find the right tab here on my old laptop. Orlando City, Charleston tomorrow on the Orange County Blues FC, and LA Galaxy 2. So the Little Galaxy, what are they officially calling them? There's some nickname that the team's calling them. It's I don't know. I'm going to call them the Little Galaxy. They're taking on the Orange County Blues FC. So there you go. 2 games on the USL Pro schedule for this weekend. Headed into the weekend, games to look forward to. Chelsea and Arsenal is your big game tomorrow. The only game in the Premier League that really kind of stands out. The rest of them, okay. Some decent games in there, I guess. A lot of ugly football teams against some decent football teams, and that doesn't always make for great games, but we'll see. And then the Clásico on Sunday. Real Madrid hosting Barcelona in La Liga. Let me go ahead and pull up my my standings here. Henrik's on the line. Hi, Henrik.
Hi. Did you see the press release from the CSA, meaning that they're changing it to June, July, and in 2015 it'll collide with the Women's World Cup. So it means that rather than so they'll do it in August. So rather than the winner of the Canadian Championship going to the CCL, it'll just be the team in MLS with the most points.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, Henrik's talking about the Canadian Championship, the Nutrilite. What is it? I don't know.
Amway.
Is it Amway now? Whatever. We don't need to give the sponsor any love on this show. The Canadian.
Yeah, call it the Voyagers Cup.
The Voyagers Cup, exactly. That's what I meant. The Voyagers Cup is being moved, and I have to read this. I haven't been able to do it on the fly. You've given us an outline there. That sounds insane to me. Why would they? First of all, why would they have a conflict with the biggest international soccer event Canada's ever hosted? And second of all, why would you take away the Champions League spot from that tournament?
Well, they plan on consistently moving it to June and July, but then in 2015 it'll collide with the Women's World Cup, meaning they'll play.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're saying
in August.
Right. Okay, I'm following along now.
It'll be too late for the entrant to be in the CCL.
Okay, I wasn't. I'm sorry, I wasn't following. The 2015 tournament will be pushed to August because of the Women's World Cup. While in going forward from 2016 forward, the Amway Neutralite Voyagers Cup Championship will be in June and July. So So what is that team from that wins the title in July going to go directly into the group stage of the Champions League? I guess that's what I'm asking.
I think so.
Okay.
But again, first of all, I don't think June and July is a really good time because every other year, every second year, you have either the World Cup or the Euros, and especially in 2015,
and the Gold Cup as well. The Gold Cup is good.
And the Gold Cup, obviously. And I also think that Edmonton and Ottawa fans aren't going to be too happy.
They shouldn't be. Henrik, I'm losing your connection. I'm going to let you go. Appreciate the call. Canadian Championship update. And we've added I haven't mentioned this. We added a Whitecap scarf to the wall. It's behind my head. I apologize for the placement. But I do have the note here. We continue to get new scarves here at Soccer Morning. This one is from Justin Abeling up in Vancouver, sending me a Whitecap scarf. Thank you very much, Justin. If you are interested in contributing to the scarf wall, it's getting out of control. Just a little bit. I mean, I have to count. I don't even know how many I have now. And we will rotate. I will create a rotation system to get everybody on the show, to get all of them on the show. But it is becoming a bit of a thing. You can hit me up, Jason at NASN.tv, Davis JSN on Twitter. Let's take one. Can I take one more call? I have time. I have like 30 seconds. 740, you're on the air.
Yeah. What do you think of Collins John going to Riverhounds? I
think Collins John took a fall from. I don't really understand how you end up where he has ended up. Nothing against the Riverhounds, but we're talking about a guy who was supposed to be a star in Europe, falling all the way down to USL Pro in America. It's crazy. And I would be, if I was a Riverhounds fan, I would be worried by the fact that he's constantly moving and he's constantly dropping down levels, and that doesn't bode well for his performance, does it?
It depends on how well. I mean, he's going to acclimate coming from playing. Where was he, in Iran?
Something like that. I mean, it's here. I'm pulling up his Wikipedia page. Let me check this out because I do think this is fascinating. Collins John, who was a Dutch international at one point for a couple of games, was a Dutch international. Let's see. Twente, Fulham, Leicester, Watford, NEC, Roselaire. I don't know where that is. Chicago Fire, Gabala. No idea where that is. 3 games. Mess Sarchesma for 4 games. Barnet for 1 game. Piast Gilweiss, whatever, which is in Poland for 1 game. That's the thing. You look, or 2 games. I'm sorry. His appearances at his last 4 clubs: 3, 4, 1, 2.
What do you think that says about USL?
I think that it says they're willing to take a chance on him, but I also think it says that Collins John shows up out of shape and doesn't try hard. That's what I think it shows. So that's why I'd be worried. I appreciate the call, man. Thanks a lot. There you go. Pittsburgh Riverhounds talk on this show. I don't know, when do they open their schedule, their season in USL Pro, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. I've driven by their stadium. It's very cool. It's a little 3,500 seat stadium on the river. There's like 8 rivers in Pittsburgh, or there's 3. And I don't really know which one it was, but I do know that they have a very nice little stadium there. The Riverhounds opened up their season on March 29th against Orlando City in Orlando. So I don't know when they open their home season. But we'll see if Colin Johns gets any time. All right, we're done. This is the end of the Friday episode. Thanks again to our guests today, Curtis Larson, Jonathan Tannenwald, Christian Niari. Go find their work. It's all excellent. It's all stunning stuff. You can get us on iTunes. Give us a rating and a review. Help out the show in that small way. And get in touch, I guess. Davis JSN, Soccer Morning on Twitter. Send us email. Send me a scarf. We'll talk to you guys Monday. We're going to start the DJ for a day thing Monday. And I think emails went out to all of our Indiegogo contributors. So we will schedule out all of the things that we need to schedule out, including guest host spots, in the very near future. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you Monday. Bye.
Back in the days on the boulevard, I landed. We used to kick routines and the presence was fitting. It was I, the abstract, and me, the 5 foot.